According to the Bible, all human beings who have ever lived are descended from one man and one woman. According to universal common descent evolution, this should not be the case. In fact, our species should have evolved with a population of at least 1 million or so. To the surprise of everyone but biblical creationists, genetic evidence has not only shown that the entire human race is indeed descended from a single woman, but directly measured mutation rates show that she lived about 6,000 years ago. Now, of course, evolutionists deny the timeline, and they deny that she was the only woman alive, but they are forced to acknowledge her existence even if they push her back more than 100,000 years. Our DNA, as well as that of most other types of animals, contains 3 basic types of DNA: autosomes, sex chromosomes, and mitochondrial DNA. The autosomes of humans consist of 22 pairs of chromosomes found in the nucleus of a cell, which children get from both parents. 1 pair of sex chromosomes, which determine whether a child is a male or female, and mitochondrial DNA, which we only get from our mothers. This is the fact that makes mitochondrial DNA perfect for tracing female ancestry. According to the theory behind universal common descent evolution, evolution takes place on a population level. So, we would be descended from a population of perhaps 1 million individuals who had common ancestors with the great apes, such as chimps, gorillas, and orangutans, and there are groups separated from them gradually over time. They would not expect our DNA to go back to the original couple. Not even our mitochondrial DNA was expected by evolutionists to trace back to a single woman. This was a big surprise, but Christians, and particularly biblical creationists, were not surprised, but delighted at the evidence for the existence of Eve. Now, evolutionists immediately jumped on the conclusion that this was evidence for the existence of the biblical Eve by pointing out that, from their theoretical perspective, she would not have been the only woman alive, but just the only woman whose mitochondrial line has survived. Now, they explain this should have occurred, but it does help give them a way out of another problem, and that is the problem of time. This is because when direct measurements are made of the mutation rate in human mitochondrial DNA, the day when this woman lived comes to just 6,000 years, making her consistent with being the biblical Eve. The way evolutionists get around this little problem is to claim that it took extra time for individual mutations to take hold in the existing population. So what they did was to obscure the idea that mitochondrial Eve is actually the biblical Eve. They calculated the rate change based on the assumption that we had a common ancestor with chimpanzees 5 million years ago. Based on this assumption, they calculated that mitochondrial Eve lived around 150,000 years ago, making it easier to dismiss the idea that she was the biblical Eve. However, when you start with Adam and Eve as the first couple and the population growing from them, the observed mitochondrial differences and mutation rate fit perfectly with the biblical Eve. It is strong evidence not only for the biblical account and time scale, but it is also an example of evolutionary presuppositions getting in the way of real science and obscuring evidence in support of the biblical account.